So I'd like to welcome you, and I'd like to introduce Catherine Burleton, who is the manager of finances for PSANS, and she is going to do a more in-depth introduction of her history and her work experience and where she has taken her expertise before. So welcome, Catherine, and I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Karen. I seem to be doing something strange with my screen, but there we're back. So, hi, everybody, and thanks for coming. And I'd like to thank Karen for organizing the session today. And as she mentioned, she's been putting together a series of webinars. I hope you have a chance to see some of the other ones as well. My name is Catherine Burleton. I'm a chartered professional accountant, and I'm currently the manager of financial services for PSANS. But previously, I worked for first the Dartmouth District School Board and then later the Halifax Regional School Board for almost 30 years. And I spent a lot of that time working directly with school staff on their finances. And as Karen mentioned, I have given this webinar several times, but it keeps evolving as I learn more about what it is that people are looking for, as well as trying to keep up with all the changes that are happening at your regional offices. So we're focusing on those of you who may be newer to your roles or may not have had the opportunity to do a lot of this before. And we have people attending from various regions, and there will be some different practices and requirements for school financial activities depending on your region. So I'm going to talk in fairly broad terms about a variety of things to try and touch on as many of the guiding principles and common practices that we can in the time we have today. I hope to give you some insight on the subject and some of the reasons behind what might at times seem like silly rules, maybe provide a few tips and tricks, and hopefully help to reduce some of the anxiety you might have about all of this. Please feel free to ask questions as we go along. You can type them into the chat at the bottom of your screen. And as Karen said, we should have time at the end as well, and we'll be watching for those questions. So I've been around for a long time, and I'm probably going to slip up and refer to the boards, but I'll try to remember to say the regions and CSAP. Please forgive me if I mess that up. And I'm also going to refer to the EECD by its initials rather than saying the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development every time, because that's too much of a mouthful. So, yeah, forgot that one. Let's just skip it. What are we going to talk about today? We're going to look at what is the challenge, who's responsible, who should do the work, when should it be done, where can we get help, a word about accumulated surplus, and a word about school cash online. So, the challenge. Way back in the 80s, when I first started working with the Dartmouth District School Board, one of my main responsibilities was to go out to schools and assist with their bookkeeping. And on one of my first school visits, I was working with a principal who was using an enormous hardcover ledger book. And you've probably never seen one of those, but we used to use these things, these giant spreadsheets on paper, not just in schools, but everywhere back in the days before computers. Anyway, he had this big book open on his desk, and he was manually recording every single cash receipt and payment by hand, just like Bob Cratchit, across all the columns, depending on what type of activity was being paid for. And we've certainly come a long way technologically since then, but when you think about it, really, what he was doing manually back then is what we're still doing. We're just trying to keep track of the money that comes in and what we spend it on. And just as an aside, I have to say, very ironically, that young principal recently joined PSANS as our new coordinator of member services. So school finances was just one step on his school administration journey. And I don't want you to think I'm oversimplifying things, because I really do understand and know that this is important and complex. And, even at the smallest school, it can still be a real pain in the neck. But I really believe that if you do break it down into its individual parts and you have a good plan, involve the right people, and you communicate well with your team, that all we really have to do is count the money and then tell our financial story. And no doubt we'll do a better job than Dilbert. So, who's responsible for the school's finances? And who are you responsible to? I'm going to answer the second part of that question first. There are a lot of people who have the right to know what is happening with the money at your school. Obviously, your parents and your school community at large, the people who are providing that money to you, deserve to know what they're paying for. And your region also supplies funding, as does the EECD, and they too have their reporting requirements. So here's a little background on that. I think it's helpful to understand what is behind the rules or the requirements that may not seem to make sense. Did you know that once a year, on March 31st, when your regional office prepares their annual financial statements, that all the money in all the public schools is required by the Government of Nova Scotia to be included in those reports? Your regional office is responsible to amalgamate and report this accurately to the government, because the government then includes all that money and from the regions and CSAP that was reported to them to be included in the province's annual financial statements. So the provincial government has the right to know that everyone under their jurisdiction, which includes all the public schools in the province, are following the rules. Each year at your central office, the finance departments are audited by an accounting firm. They must sign a document swearing that all of the financial information they're providing is complete and accurate, including the portion that is school-based. In turn, the accounting firm is required to prepare a statement that goes to the Auditor General of Nova Scotia, which includes assurances from them that everyone is following the required standards. So I hope it's helpful for you to understand where your finance colleagues are coming from when they provide you with certain requirements. It's a very serious matter, and it starts at the school level. And it's the principal who has the fiduciary responsibility for all the funds that are under the school's control. But that doesn't mean that the principal must personally do all the work of keeping track of the school's finances. In fact, ideally, the principal shouldn't do any of it. So who should do the work? I've created a little flow chart that shows the steps involved in managing the school's money. And I'm going to present this with the assumption that you're doing the work at your school. I know that some of the regions have staff members in their finance departments that do some of this work for you, and those schools are very fortunate to have that taken off their plates. But today we'll talk about all the details that are involved so that everyone's aware of how to manage this on your own. And we're going to examine it in 3 groups. The first group is cash management. So money comes into the school, the money goes to the bank, and the money is spent. This is the area where the school is exposed to its greatest risk of loss and fraud, particularly if you are dealing with cash. As you all know very well, these days, anybody can call you out from the safety of their home computer or their handheld device and publicly accuse you of wrongdoing without any proof. Stealing money from kids is something you do not want anyone in your school to be accused of. So if your cash handling processes are above reproach, you can protect yourself from this type of accusation. Ideally, the only way that your school would accept payment is electronically, which creates a record of exactly who paid what and places the funds directly in your account, leaving no opportunity for loss. In Nova Scotia, all public schools have access to school cash online, and one of the great things about it is its potential to provide an online payment system that will allow your school to operate cash free. Not everyone is using this to its full potential, and unfortunately, I don't know and I can't tell you in detail what's available in your particular region. But I will be giving you contact information at the end of this session for the people in your region who can. But for now, I'm going to get into some details and recommend specific ways of keeping track of the money that's being handled if you must accept cash. I'm going to refer to an accounting principle called separation of duties. The idea is to have different people involved with various tasks to reduce the chance of theft and fraud, or to look at it in a different way, to protect you and your staff from any accusations of wrongdoing. I will suggest several steps in the cash handling process where the responsibility should shift to another person in order to provide a series of checks and balances. If you must accept cash, chances are it's coming into your classroom teachers first. Ideally, they would count it in front of the student or parent and provide a signed receipt. Well, I realize that that's possibly going to be too onerous, but I'm putting it out there because it is a way to protect everyone. Have your teachers use a standard form to record the details of the money they receive and what it was for. Have them bring the form with the money to the office in a sealed envelope daily. It should never be left in the classroom or, God forbid, taken home. What would the online trolls say about that? Usually, it's the school secretary that deals with the next few steps. Place the envelopes in the safe as soon as possible. Do not leave them lying around. As soon as possible, with 2 people present, open the envelopes to verify the contents and provide the teacher with a receipt. And you can do this easily by photocopying the form that the teacher included with the envelope and initialing it, and then just giving that copy back to them. If there was an error made by the teacher when they were counting their money and filling out their form, if 2 people count that cash together in the office, then those people are protected. Next step, going to the bank. Make your bank deposits frequently. Again, don't leave the money sitting around. Record the amount of the bank deposit and then have a third person take the deposit to the bank and bring back a receipt. Check your bank account regularly to ensure the deposits actually did make it into the account. Think about it this way. Fraud can most easily occur when the same person receives the money, counts the money, prepares the bank deposit, and is the one who takes the money to the bank. And by the way, did you notice how many times I referred to receipts? Receipts provide proof and protection. Now, when you're spending your money, again, try to use as little cash as possible. If cash is used to make payments, receipts are absolutely essential. One of my former finance colleagues at one of the regions has a mantra for people with no receipts. She says to them, "No receipt? Thanks for your donation." Receipts provide proof that the funds were spent and spent on the appropriate items. While an auditor might ignore 1 or 2 small missing receipts, when you add up all the amounts from all the schools in the province, the Auditor General would not look kindly on what that total might be if we weren't insisting on receipts. Credit cards can provide some measure of safety by reducing the need for cash, but receipts are still just as important. I mean, yes, the credit card statement will show that the money was spent at Sobeys, but it won't prove that it wasn't spent on a beef tenderloin instead of supplies for the breakfast program. So, I mean, of course, we know and trust our coworkers, and most people are honest, but receipts provide proof that everything is being done appropriately. This is one of those things that may seem like a hassle until such time as you have to defend yourself from that disgruntled online troublemaker. If it's a routine expectation that becomes part of your school's culture, there's a much better chance that a problem will not arise. And finally, when using checks, always require 2 signatures. Never circumvent the security that is provided by requiring multiple approvers to review your expenditures. Never sign a check made out to yourself or to someone else who's also signing that same check. This is why you have to have at least 3 approved signers on your account, and never pre-sign a check. Always make sure you get and carefully file the appropriate documents, receipts, to support the check. By doing so, you'll be ready for any questions that may arise from unexpected places. Now, who should do the work? Who should do the bookkeeping? Work is in bookkeeping is the money is recorded based on which project it's for. The expenditures are recorded based on which project they were for. Bank account is balanced and financial reports are created. This is the bookkeeping. Who should do it? Not the person who counts the money or takes it to the bank. This is another place where you have a separation of duties. Not only does this reduce your exposure to fraud, but it also breaks the work into a number of more manageable tasks. And my advice is that you find somebody who enjoys doing it. And no doubt many of you will wonder who on earth that could ever be. But I can tell you there are lots of people, and I'm one of them, who finds that sort of thing to be rather enjoyable. It's something like putting a puzzle together. It doesn't have to be your math teacher. It could be anyone on staff, it could be a volunteer, or it could even be a paid bookkeeper if you have that kind of flexibility in the budget. The important thing is that this person doesn't have access to the school's money. They will need to.
Wonderful. How are you doing?
Someone's got their sound on. If you could just mute, that would be great. The bookkeeper, it's important that they do not have access to the school's money. They'll need to have knowledge of all the activities that involve the school's funds and be allowed to ask questions and follow up on any discrepancies. And then they can look for the transactions that should be present and ask questions if things don't look right. Each month, they'll balance the bank account and prepare reports for the principal to review. When setting up the books, originally someone will have created categories that work for your needs, but you can always change those if those needs change. The monthly reports start with the amount that was in each category at the end of the last report. They add and subtract what happened this month, and they show what's left in each category at the end of the month. If everything was recorded properly during the month, the total on the report will be the same as the total on the bank statements, plus or minus any outstanding items. And this monthly report will tell the story of what the school is doing with its money. So the final section, who should do the work, is the principal's review. Financial reports are reviewed. While the principal has the ultimate responsibility for ensuring that appropriate procedures are in place, ideally, the principal should not have to personally perform any of the tasks that are involved in processing the incoming or outgoing funds or doing the bookkeeping, other than to provide authorizations, such as being one of the signatories on the checks that are written. This is another point where there's a separation of duties with all the checks and balances that those provide, and it permits the principal to manage the school's finances while protecting them from any perception of wrongdoing. The monthly review gives the principal an opportunity to see what happened, ask questions, and to be aware of the status of all the activities that are affected, provide guidance or intervention when required, and be ready to tell the school's financial story whenever questions arise. When should this work be done? The processes of collecting and banking funds should be done daily if possible. If bags of money, tons of invoices and receipts are being dropped on somebody's desk or dropped in a drawer and forgotten about, or electronic transfers are piling up in the email, not only does this create a risk of financial loss, but ultimately chaos. Regular times should be planned for processing all the collected money, making bank deposits, the review and approval of payments, and the preparation and review of reports. Obviously, there's a lot of priorities in a school's office and many distractions. It's up to the principal to communicate the expectation that the school's finances are a priority and that the work is expected to be carried out in specific ways at specific times. But the principal must also support this work by ensuring that staff members who are entrusted with doing it are provided with such things as a quiet environment, appropriate equipment, and the necessary time to do that work. It's really critical that the monthly bank recs and the financial reports be prepared and reviewed routinely so that any issues are detected and dealt with before they get out of control. So set a schedule for regular monthly meetings in advance and treat those as a priority. This is another example of creating a school culture where expectations and responsibilities are clearly understood. I mentioned School Cash Online earlier, and we're going to come back to that now. I know that this program is available to all public schools in Nova Scotia, but I also understand that different regions use it in different ways. It was originally developed by two school secretaries in Ontario. Imagine how well off they are now. So it was designed for the specific needs of schools, and it's used now in schools across North America. I spoke earlier about the risk that's associated with handling cash and the security that money transfers provide. In addition, using this software can automate a lot of the bookkeeping too. As I mentioned, there are different levels of functionality implemented in the various regions, but I encourage you to use School Cash Online as much as possible to reduce your workload and provide much greater level of security over your funds. If you're fortunate enough to work in a region that has staff members in finance who are dedicated to doing many of these tasks for you, it may be possible to have many of the activities I've just described taken off your plate. And then that's an ideal way to separate the duties. It's possible with School Cash Online and support from your finance department that you may never have to do any banking or bookkeeping at the school. But it's still very important to review the reports you receive from finance and ensure that they're complete and accurate. I've also heard that there might be some hesitation to make use of School Cash Online because of the fees that are involved. Fees for electronic banking are included in all commercial transactions. In a retail environment, the vendor can hide those fees by including them in the cost of what they're selling, but schools don't have the opportunity to mark up your products to cover your overhead. So the person who's paying may see the actual cost of using the electronic payment. But many people prefer the convenience and security of paying electronically, and it will save a lot of efforts on both sides of the transaction, as well as protect everyone from the possibility of loss. School Cash Online offers an opportunity for parents and grandparents to safely and conveniently pay for the things their family need. There's also a new charitable donations module, apparently just being rolled out this year or fairly recently at some of the regions. And that module sends out tax receipts automatically and the money appears in your account. If your region hasn't enabled this functionality, ask them to consider it. It will dramatically reduce your workload and it will help to protect your school from losses. Another topic that can cause concern is accumulated surplus. Accumulated surplus is an accounting term. And basically, what it means is money that's left over after several years. It's the kind of thing you expect to see in a business that's working for profit or an organization that's building a nest egg for the future. But it can be pretty unexpected to see this in a school. I spoke earlier about the fact that on March 31st every year, the regions and CSAP report in their financial statements on the money that's held at every public school in the province. When totaled together, that's a significant amount of money. And sometimes politicians and bureaucrats may ask, why do schools have so much money left over at the end of every fiscal year? Of course, we know there's plenty of good reasons for this. And it doesn't help that the end of the fiscal year is in March. But as the principal, with the fiduciary responsibility that you have, it will be necessary to be able to respond to this question. When asking for money from parents, you must be able to explain exactly what it will be used for and ensure that this is exactly what happens. Looking at your financial reports each month, you can ask if the plan for each category is going as expected. At the end of March, and again at the end of the school year, especially if you're moving to a different school, know what money you have and why you still have it. What's the plan for spending it? Will today's money be used for the benefit of today's students? So, in summary, make sure that you have a financial plan, get the right people involved in doing the work, count your money by using good bookkeeping practices, review the information regularly in order to monitor the process and evaluate the results of your financial plan so that you will be ready to tell your school's financial story. Where can you get some help? When I was at the board, I often experienced a rather negative reaction when I had a reason to call a school. Something along the lines of, "Oh no, what do you want?" And I would chuckle, but it could be a bit demoralizing at times. There are excellent people working in finance at every region and at CSAP, and I can tell you this confidently because I know quite a few of them. And unlike in Dilbert's world, they are human. They may have arcane knowledge, but they are not evil, and they actually do want to help you. These people can tell you more about how things work in your region, provide you with forms and procedures that have been designed to assist you and protect you, brainstorm problems, even come out to your school to help train people or figure out why the bank account won't balance. If you're lucky, you are in a region that provides staff who will do some of this work for you. Having someone else do this work frees up your school based staff to deal with what's in front of them. Reports should come to you at regular and predictable times so you can plan your monthly financial review around that timing. If you have a problem or you need something in a hurry, you can call and ask. You can call and ask for help. Please remember that finance staff aren't just working for you, though. They have other responsibilities too, and they deserve the same respect and appreciation that the staff members working in your building get. However, if you aren't getting the help you need, don't hesitate to escalate your issue to the next level of authority. Now, I'm going to show you slides for each region and CSAP with the names and numbers for you to reach the financial people who are designated to respond to schools' financial needs. And while I do that, I'll take any questions you have. Please send them in the chat if you haven't already. And while you're typing, I'll respond to a few questions that I received in advance. So, doing this region by region, and in the Valley, Marion Campbell is the coordinator of finance and is the one who's designated to take your calls. And I'll just keep clicking along with these, hopefully not too fast. If I go too fast, let me know and I'll slow down. I was asked for an overview and explanation of the difference between the instructional account and the other accounts. The instructional account is money that is provided to you from the region to be used as needed. The difference between it and the other accounts is likely that the other ones are for specific purposes such as sports teams, yearbooks, breakfast program, special grants, library, your SAC, and so on. So the money in those accounts can't be used for anything else. So it's much easier to keep track of it when it's accounted for separately. I hope that's not oversimplifying. And if you're the person who asked this question and you need more information, feel free to contact me or the person at your school, at your regional office, I should say, who could answer it in more detail. CSAP, again, the coordinator is the contact person, and here's Renaud's number. I was asked for tips for the end of year report for the SAC, and I have to admit that I'm not familiar with exactly what's required in this case. I'm not sure that every region has that money managed at the school, though, so I would assume that they would want to know the same sort of thing that the school needs. How much they started with, what was it spent on, and what's left at the end. If you are looking after this for your SAC, ask your region if they can open an account in their system to run this money through. They may have other ways to assist you with this as well. Okay. The actual director of finance is one of the people you can call at the South Shore, along with the school-based funds clerk, Kim. Karen, have you received any questions at all in the chat?
I have not, but I did say when we wait till you finished your presentation and then I'll stop the recording. So I'll just wait till you
Okay.
finish the last couple slides and then we'll stop the recording. And if anybody has a question, we can deal with it.
Okay, and while I show you the last couple of slides, there's another question that I received at a previous webinar that I think might be interesting depending on who is attending today. I was asked about high school finances and creating a budget for school departments based on last year's spending. Now, there's obviously lots of money and lots of people involved in a high school with a much greater level of complexity, but budget planning is a good idea for any school. I imagine you would meet with your department heads to discuss their budget for the year individually. Starting with what they spent last year is reasonable, but you should also compare that to the budget they had. Were they able to spend as planned a year ago, or did unexpected things happen that need to be adjusted for? Will there be more or fewer students this year? Will the program be the same as it was? Where can they save? Where do they need more, and how can that be obtained? Developing a budget at the beginning of the year provides you with a tool for setting expectations. And if actual results are monitored at regular times throughout the year, plans can be revised before you have a crisis. So that is everybody. Thank you very much for being here and your interest. Feel free to call me if you think I can help you on a one-on-one basis, and try to have fun with it.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure you're the only one on this webinar that thinks this is fun, Catherine, but
sorry, it is.
We can get to the level of bearable for most people. We're doing well, but I'd like to thank you very much again for presenting once again and giving us lots of information. I am now going to stop the recording and then we'll see if there's anybody online that wants to ask a question. Please, no question is too silly or because there isn't silly questions. Finance is a big part of our role. It's an important part of our role and you need to have confidence in what you're doing. So I'm going to stop recording.